So this week we want to look at solving trig equations. Remember that this is the end of the semester. You should have the final exam date on your calendar. And if you don't already, you should look for it now. Make sure you put it on your calendar and set reminders. You don't want to be late. You don't want to miss it. So when we're solving a trigonomic equation, we're trying to find the value of theta, the angle measure. And we're going to use substitution to check if an answer is correct. So that means whenever you solve an equation, you can use substitution to see if you solved it correctly. So we're given an equation here, 4 sine theta minus 2 equals 0. And we're asked to check, is theta equals pi by 3 radians a solution? We're going to use substitution to see if it's true. We want to isolate sine theta. We added 2 divided by 4 and found that the sine of pi by 3 is equal to 1/2. Now, some of you will be more comfortable still working in degrees. 180 divided by 3. And we have this statement, sine 60 degrees equals 1/2. Is this a true statement? Maybe you've memorized that point on the unit circle, you've memorized that table, or you use the triangle like I'm going to now. And we see that at 60 degrees, sine y over r is root 3 over 2. So the sine of 60 degrees does not equal 1/2. That means that this is not a solution. So we're given the same equation and we're asked to check, is theta equals pi by 6 a solution? Why don't you do the substitution here? So again, you use substitution. You found that sine of pi by 6 radians equals 1/2, or sine of 30 degrees equals 1/2. You can check using your point on the unit circle, the chart, or the triangle. And we see that yes, sine of 30 degrees y over r is equal to 1/2. This is a true statement. So yes, this is a solution. So we can see then that pi by 3 radians, pi by 6 radians, or 30 degrees is a solution. But it's important to know that this is not the only solution. In fact, there are an infinite number of solutions. If we look at the graph, 4 sine theta minus 2 equals y. Now let's go back and look at that equation for a moment here. We had 4 sine theta minus 2 equals 0. You can see that all we did for our equation was let y equal 0. Whenever we're letting y equal 0, we know that we're finding the x-intercepts. And I can see from the graph here that there's certainly more than one x-intercepts. And because we know that this graph continues to both negative and positive infinity, we can see that there are going to be an infinite number of x-intercepts. We see that the line y equals 0 intersects this graph an infinite number of times, giving us an infinite number of solutions. Now, if we had asked that same question, 4 sine theta minus 2 equals 0, but said here's a restriction only from 0 degrees to 90 degrees, then our solution, theta equals 30 degrees, would be the only solution. So solving trig equations means not only knowing how to solve the equation, but also being aware of what is asked for. There are three possibilities, and you're going to need to read carefully because as I've looked over the exams over the last 10 years, I see that quite often people are not paying attention to what is asked for. And if you don't give what is asked for, specifically, no more, no less, you're going to get 0. So let's be careful. The first possibility is that you're asked to solve for theta on a given interval. Now, often in Pearson, it's going to be from 0 to 2 pi radians. Now, if you think about 0 to 2 pi, you know that means we're looking at 1 revolution around the circle. We're checking for answers in every quadrant. The second possibility is to say we want a general formula. What is the formula that will represent all possible solutions? When you're asked for the general formula, we're going to use the periodic property of the function. So generally, not always, but generally, there will be 2 formulas for sine and cosine and their reciprocals. And generally, there will be 1 formula for tangent. Now, people forget this, also for cotangent. We use the value for theta either from quadrant 1 or quadrant 2. The third possibility will be to find an n possible solutions, where n equals any integer. I might ask you for 2 solutions, or 4 solutions, or 5 solutions. You need to read carefully and decide what is being asked for. In the next lecture, we're going to look at solving equations using either 1, 2, or 3.